Welcome into today's episode of How to Ride a Roller Coaster. I'm David Ezel, and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Chris Knudsen. He is a consultant extraordinaire, and he is also the CEO of Stoic Yeti, which is an advertising agency focused on helping direct-to-consumer companies. What's going on?
Great to be with you, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We were talking a little bit before we started hitting record tonight. So you are not here in Texas. You are in a place where the fall weather actually gets to, which, we've had kind of teases of fall, but not quite yet. So where are you?
Yeah, I'm located just outside of Park City, Utah, actually.
Not jealous in the least.
And yeah, we're having a very nice fall. It's been really nice this year, actually.
So my wife and I were actually in Park City, I guess a month and a half ago. Like end of
Oh,
July. And it was my
great.
first time there. It was beautiful. We hit Salt Lake and then went to Park City. And I multiple times along the trip, I looked at her and I said, yeah, I could do this. We could, just pack it up. Let's grab everybody and let's do it.
And a lot of people have done that since COVID. I think they're like, this is a little bit better than what name your metro area, right? They're like, hey, let's move here. So
What 1000%.
yeah, it's nice. It's nice.
Nice. So let's go ahead and dive off into it. I want to know everything about Stoic Yeti, your position as CMO and also CEO. You guys are an advertising agency. So a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are in the process of growing their business, wanting to grow a business. But, you can't be good at everything. And a lot of times marketing and things like that, how to get your word out there, those types of things can be elusive. It feels like you have to jump out and spend tons of money just to kind of get up and going. So if there's anybody out there that's listening and they're knee deep in it in entrepreneurship, when it comes to some of that marketing side, kind of where would you help them kind of reframe what they need to do?
Yeah. So today is actually Stoic Yeti's 4th birthday. So,
Wow.
and
Heck yeah.
we had a team meeting this morning and we celebrated for all of about 10 seconds and we were like, cool, let's get to work. So it wasn't that big of a deal, I guess, but Stoic Yeti was really born out of my work as a consultant. I started all the way back in independent consulting in 2010. I always say my last real job that I had was I was managing marketing as a CMO at a large digital agency. And I had seen in the market that at the time what was really emerging was outsourced chief financial officers.
Hmm.
So guys who are really good at finance who you get startups or smaller businesses and they really need that type of talent in finance, but they can't afford a full-time CFO.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a perfect model for CMOs, right? That's a perfect model for marketing. And so I should go and do that same model for marketing. And so I left my job and jumped in with both feet. And I said to myself, look, if I can't make this work in 6 months, then, or if I go like 6 months where I don't have any real income or whatever, then I'll go get a real job again. Right. And so
Yeah.
that was 13 years ago. So in that process, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. There was no roadmap for like, how do you leave and go do independent consulting and just work by myself, right? Just do my own thing. There's a lot of books about how to start a business. And so when I left, there wasn't really a roadmap for like, well, okay, you just want to go be like it's like people can't wrap their head around. They're like, okay, wait a minute, you just want to work for yourself and you're not going to try and hire employees and all this other stuff. And I'm like, at the time I was like, no, I just want to work for myself. And I was able to go do that and grow that into a pretty decent business with really good income. And we can go into all those details if we need to, but eventually ended up at I was outsourced the chief marketing officer at Purple Mattress. I invented their launch strategy, and that was in 2015, 2016 when I did that, and that really put me on the map at that point. Purple's launch story is pretty storied now in marketing. It's a case study that is found actually in a lot of places. What we did there. And so about 2019, my partner who I brought on to Purple at one point, he was heading up growth at Purple. And he and I came together in about 2019. We were like, hey, we have a lot of people show up in our world who are like, how did you guys do this at Purple? We need help. And we started Stoic Yeti. So that was really graduation out of like just independent consulting or consulting on my own into what I'll call more scalable services from an income standpoint, because you only have so many hours in the day for consulting, which is totally fine. Like if you want to go be a consultant and you're willing to put your hours and the time into it, I mean, depending on what you charge and how good you are, you can make a very good living, 30, 40, $50,000 a month, type of a living where, you're probably not going to make that in employment. Right. And so,
Sure.
but it had gotten to the point where it was like, this is the time where my clients were asking for like, hey, I need paid media, like buying, I need, creative, I need video, I need, all brand, I need all these things that, as an independent consultant, I would normally go out and hire somebody and bring another consultant in, or I'd hire an agency or whatever. And so, my partner and I got together and said, let's just build an agency and we'll just build those services in house and we'll go, sell them to clients. And so we've worked with a ton of awesome companies in the last 4 years, like Harley Davidson,
Wow.
all the way down to like little startups, which have been a lot of fun too. So it's been quite a wild ride, actually.
Yeah. So to say that entrepreneurship is just pouring out of you would be an understatement.
Maybe.
So what is maybe something that, if you could talk to 4 year ago, Chris, whenever you started, something that you wish you could have just known now, or something that you wish you could have known then, I'm sorry, that now that you could have just maybe had like in your tool belt that you could have said, man, this is something that can save us some heartache or some growth, along the way.
Well, it's not that I didn't know it. Maybe I didn't emphasize it enough. It's that your organizational capability is critical, right? Your ability to stay on top of things, project management software, especially if you have employees and you have people who are working on like video projects and stuff like that. Just staying organized and just keeping up on your deliverables is key, right? And there was a point where we weren't really good at that. We ended up hiring in a project manager who came in and got us on track on project management stuff. And that was really crucial. That was definitely one of those things. But I would say too, it's like client services work is just hard in general, right? And so, when I was an independent consultant, I was doing CMO consulting. It was like, okay, it was just me, and I would show up, and they want me at this meeting, or they want me to come talk to this employee, or they want, this, and it was, relatively easy to manage the client. But when it came down to like agency work, and it was like, okay, now what I have to do is I have to like go buy media. I have to show the results of it. I have to show what worked, what didn't work. And it turned into like a performance issue. Then managing the client got a lot more difficult. Right. Yeah. And so that's probably the thing I'd go back and tell myself is, hey, I know you're going to go do agencies work, but just so you know, managing client as an agency is a lot more difficult than managing the client as just an individual independent consultant.
Yeah. And you just touched on the exact question that I was going to ask, that difference between being like the fractional CMO and working for a company where you kind of come in and you fit that piece of the puzzle versus having the agency where you have to kind of be in charge of everything. You've got to project manage. You've got to make sure the relationship with the client is good, project delivery, all of that kind of stuff. I used to have an agency back in like 2018, and that was one of the biggest things that I found was very similar to that. Because it's almost kind of like left brain, right brain. You have to be so systemic when it comes to your processes, and you have to make sure that you're over delivering for the customer before the deadline, and then the other half is you still have to put out fires with those customers and everything else. So it just felt like it was such a push and a pull, as opposed to having like that CMO or that marketing director type role within a company.
Yeah. Marketing in general is, like gone are the days where marketing is like, okay, we're going to go put an ad in a magazine and let's just hope, like cross our fingers and hope it works. Right. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. Right. I mean, everything is measured, especially with digital. You can measure everything, honestly, almost everything. There's problems in attribution, but it's like, but everything else, like especially if you're buying in social platforms or Google, those types of platforms, like you have to be extremely creative on one level. And in fact, in our agency, that's where we really excel is on the creative side, because we see that the differentiation, and we learned this from our Purple days, that really differentiation and performance in paid media comes from your creative, right? It's all about how good your creative is or isn't, right? And so you have to be extremely good and extremely creative on that creative side, building really interesting and cool videos and doing all that type of work. But then you have to put on your MBA hat and be like, okay, let's look at all these numbers and figure out what's going on here. And so it's a pretty diverse skill set that is required of agencies, and good agencies are good at employing like really good left brain and really good right brain people.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I couldn't have said that any better. And I definitely want to, I mean, not that we're delving off into that totally just yet, but I definitely want to see how that tails into the book that you have right now, which is called Trust
Yeah.
Me, I'm a Consultant, because it feels like all of that consulting know-how, starting from the consulting side, everything has just kind of been that great segue into encapsulating all of it because you have the answer to so many questions.
Yeah. So the book was born. Well, let's see. I started writing the book during COVID. Because if for over the years, or I should say, okay, at the time it was like about this 10 years that I've been doing consulting work, and we were just, I mean, in fact, the week that we went into lockdowns is like that Friday before in March is when we hired our first employee.
Wow.
And then it was like, okay, did we just make a huge mistake? Like what just happened? Right.
Yeah.
And it worked out fine because direct to consumer especially took off during COVID. And so like we immediately lost all our clients and then we immediately got all of them back and more. It was weird. Right. So
Yeah.
it all happened while we were locked down.
Scare tactic. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, well, we can't afford this anymore. And then they call back 2 weeks later, like, we don't know what's going on, but our business is blowing up. I mean, we had a mattress company that we were working with that grew 300% in 2020.
Wow.
You know, they just completely exploded. And because everybody's getting these stimulus checks and they're like, well, what should we buy? Oh, this mattress sucks. Let's get a new mattress, right? So
we're at home all the time now. We're sleeping later. Let's just do it.
Yeah, exactly. We spent a lot more time in bed. And so it was really funny because that stuff just really took off. But so I said but we still had a lot of time on our hands during COVID. So I sat down, I took the culmination of all these notes that I had compiled over the last 10 years, and I teach at the university level. And so I have a lot of things that I put together as a university instructor for classes on entrepreneurship and these types of things.
Awesome.
And I just looked at all of it, and I looked at all the culmination of like all the stories and everything. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start to organize this. So I started organizing everything into what I thought chapters were. And then I really thought about like, what are the things about business books that I like and what are the things that I don't like? And I'll focus on the things that I don't like, which are like 30,000 foot information, right?
Yeah.
You know, here's how to be a billionaire. And it's a 30,000 foot information type book written by someone who's not a billionaire, right?
Right.
And so
inherit one. That's the best way.
Yeah. And so I was like, I really want to write. Going back to what I said before about just jumping out of my job, my agency job, and just jumping right into it. I'm like, I didn't have a roadmap. And I'm like, I've learned enough about this at this point that I could probably write a pretty good roadmap for people. And so I was like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this book that I don't think a lot of people, this area where a lot of people I don't think have thought, which is like, you're not going to go out, you're not building a product, hiring employees, raising capital, hiring a sales team, all those types of things. It's you. You're the product. You're the salesperson. You're the one that fulfills. You're the independent consultant, right?
Yep.
And so that's what's unique about the book is it's like, okay, you're sitting in a office right now. You're a graphic designer. You're an engineer. You're an accountant. You're whatever your technical skill set is. That technical skill set can be purchased at a consulting level for a lot more money than you're probably making as a W-2 employee. And so I wrote the roadmap for here's how you take that skill set that you have. Here's how you graduate out of employment. Here's how you become an independent consultant. And here's all the benefits of doing that if you do it correctly, which are make more money, have more time for yourself, frankly, less stress. I've always been less stressed in self-employment as a consultant than I ever was when I was an employee.
Wow.
Right. So for me, that the stress of employment has been way better on my psyche than employment.
And that's a great one right there just to kind of dive into is just the stress level difference between being a W-2 employee versus being a consultant and working for yourself. Is it because you know that is it because you've figured out kind of that recipe that works best and you know how to effectively manage your time where maybe you don't have full reign on that as a W-2? I mean, is it time or is it something else?
Yeah, for me, a lot of it is time, but you don't own your time as a W-2 employee. Your time is rented, right? Your skill set is rented. Your time is rented. And in exchange for that, you receive a paycheck, right? So if you're a graphic designer, your employer doesn't own your graphic design skill set. They're just renting it from you, right? And so that's a really good way of looking at it. So you can say, okay, I'm renting it right now, 100% of my time out to this person. They control all of my time. So what if I rented out these skill sets to maybe 3 or 4 different people for 10 hours here or 5 hours there, 15 hours there, whatever it may be. And then I can decide if, like I was thinking about this the other day, I was in 2018, like I didn't work on Fridays.
Wow.
I was like, I remember that year I was like, I'm just going to work Monday through Thursday. I'm going to set my clients up. So I'm only working Monday through Thursday. And Friday is my time that I get to go do a thing or go skiing or whatever it is I like to go do. Right.
Wow.
And I did. And even now running an agency, my Fridays are actually pretty open. Right. And so that ability to own my time to me is almost more important than anything else. In fact, I'd be happy probably making less money than I would as a CMO in a big company, which I could easily do right now at this point in my career. Like being a CMO in a big company or CEO in a big company and not owning my time. I'd way rather own my time and make less money. It's just way more important to me.
No doubt. What has the reception been like so far with the book?
The book is great. In fact, we're just right in the middle of a big marketing push on the book right now, getting a lot of readership on the book. I think there's a lot of people in the world who are in this place where they're like, yeah, this actually sounds really appealing. Like, I don't want to go start a big business and try and figure out how to raise money and hire people and build a product. But I'm really good at graphic design. So how do I take these graphic design skills and go sell them to other businesses and own my own time and make more money, right? And so the reception's been pretty interesting in that regard, because I just think there's this gap that's existed there of people who are like, well, I don't want to go down that traditional entrepreneur route, but I would love to work for myself. This is the roadmap of how to go do that. That's exactly what this book is. If you're driving in your car home, listening to me and David talk right now, and you're like, I hate my job and I'm an engineer and I had to blow up with my manager today and I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Like I wrote this book for you, frankly. Right. And so I also didn't want the book to be boring, because business books are very boring, right? Coming back to that question about why it's different. So the book's almost written in a bit of a memoir format, but it has I incorporated a lot of like all the stories are true. And there's some of them are unbelievable, and a lot of them are kind of very funny, right?
Wow.
So, but there's lessons to be learned. There's lessons to be learned in those, right? And as a marketing guy, I'm a little bit link baity, right? So I created these titles for these chapters to make people want to read them. So things like how I got paid in a job interview, how to finance a startup with your disabled brother's social security money, right? How to lose all your sister's millions on a podcasting startup, right? A diabolical plan to get revenge on Reed Hastings. That was an interesting story. And I talk about that in the book in detail, right? The devs are doing cocaine in the bathroom again, right? It's all these, so there's all these crazy stories of all these things that I've encountered in my career as an independent consultant the last 13 years that are true and really weird. Some are really weird, but at the same time, there's really interesting lessons for people to take away and go, oh, okay, so if I go into this and I'm working on my own, I need to remember X, right? But it's definitely a detailed blueprint on how to get there. I did not want to gyp the reader and give them a book telling them I'm going to show them how to go do it, and then I didn't show them how to go do it. So I was very sensitive about that, and I wanted to be very thorough on that front.
And it's so funny, you read my mind. When you mentioned that a few minutes ago, I feel like the majority of every, entrepreneur or business book that is sitting on my shelf right now kind of falls into that same vein, where it gets me hooked. I read it, but then I still end the book and I'm like, well, okay. And I don't have anything tangible. It's not like, look, this is what I did. This is what I learned. This is how I went from point A to point B. It's just very 30,000 foot view. But I also think that you hit right on it. And I love that that's where your focus is with this book, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, you think in typical entrepreneur stance. It's like, okay, well, I've got to put together a pitch deck. I've got to go raise some capital. What venture capitalists do I know? What angels do I know? I've got to build this whole big thing. Then I got to think about hiring. Where are we going to get all, everybody thinks in those types of terms, I feel. And I love how you mentioned it, that your talent and everything else is rented, but you can do so much more with that because you own it. And I feel like that's just such a great little nuance to it, because I think at the forefront, consulting can kind of feel very large, and just kind of, where do I start? What does that look like? It's me and what? How do I grow? Is it still trading time for money on an hourly basis? But I feel like you've really kind of cracked that ice cube open, and you're just kind of uncovering and helping to pull to the surface the things that are really valuable.
It's way easier to get into independent consulting than it is to go raise money, build a product, hire people, do all that. It's way easier. It's way easier. And I basically lay it off for. I'm like, okay, here's how you go get your first clients. Here's how you should charge. Here's like if you want to keep your day job and you still want it and you want to moonlight and you want to test this out, here's how you do it. Right. It's very much that level of detail of like, this is exactly how you go after it, not just like doing it, but also helping you go through the decision process of if you really want to do it. Right. Because there's this issue that we have. I spent a lot of time in the book talking about this. We have this, I didn't invent this, but there's the 20-80 rule is very well documented, which is 20% of your employees are your rock stars and your 80% are your not rock stars. They're your mids. Right. And so the 20% group they are perfectly suited for self-employment. Most of them just don't know how to get there. Right. They're just like, okay, I'm a rock star in this business. I'm awesome at this thing. I'm the best engineer here. I'm the best salesperson here. I'm the best, marketing guy here, whatever it is. But they just don't know how to make that leap over into self-employment and make probably more money than they're making right now. That doesn't mean if you're an 80%er, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. But I talk a lot in the book about like, hey, if you're an 80%er, this is what this means. Here's how it looks like. You probably need to internalize this a little bit and decide if you're actually an 80 or a 20%er. Because if you are an 80%er, you can become a 20%er. And that's what I want people to do. I want them to become rock stars at work because that will set them up really well for self-employment. And so I spent a lot of time in the book on these, what I'll call kind of these employment issues. We have a lot of generational problems right now. I could go into in depth on a lot of those types of things, but it's like the more you can rise above a lot of like society's issues and society's problems and you can be that 20%, you're putting yourself in a really good position, especially in the world that we live in now. There's one person available, I think, for about every 6 job openings that we have in the United States right now, right? Everybody who wants a job can have a job. Yeah. Even though the economy is really not good, things are very slow, inflation is high. We've had, this roller coaster, speaking of roller coasters that we've been on, right, since COVID. Yeah. There's still a lot of jobs out there for people to go and take and work. And so you can do that, or you can set yourself up to go capture some of that share of the work that's out there and do it as an independent consultant. And there's a really awesome way of doing that. And there's a really awesome lifestyle you can create by doing that. That's what we talk about in the book.
Awesome. And not to oversimplify or anything like that, but with the 80%, is it mindset? Is it getting them understanding what it's going to take to become that 20 or become that person who could jump out on their own?
Yeah, partially. Yeah. First of all, it's getting them to understand that they're in the 80% because I found that a lot of people that are in the 80% think they're in the 20. I can't tell you how many times I've been as a consultant, I'm sitting down with employees in a company. I have an employee who'll say something to me like, this place would fall apart without me here. And I'm like, dude, I could hire 10 people right now who would replace you and do a better job. Like, you just got to realize like you're replaceable. Yeah. And so a lot of these 80%ers, they don't realize, they actually think they're 20%ers. So I spend a lot of time, I define these groups really well. And I'm like, look, you have to internalize the definitions here and you really have to ask yourself what group you're in. And if you're in that 80%, here's how you get in the 20%. Like, this is what you go do. For a lot of people, they'll never get into the 20% unless they actually quit their current job and they go do a reset and get a new job. And they walk into the new job and they're like, okay, here I'm going to be a 20%er. Huh. And because culture, a lot of times, sometimes it's not their fault. I'll be frank. I mean, sometimes there's culture and other, factors. Your boss is a big factor. In fact, most people between like by the time you're 35, most people will have had somewhere between 9 and 15 or 14 jobs. Okay. And so, So like I look at resumes today, and what's common in resumes today is 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. And when I used to see that 20 years ago, that was a major red flag. And now I don't see any resumes like that. They're all like that, right? That tells me that people they're quitting their bosses is what they're doing. In fact, most of them, the surveys that have been done, it's like, oh, I like my company, I hate my boss. Yep. And so we have this kind of huge managerial crisis in America that I spend a lot of time talking about in the book as well, because a lot of the things that make you a good manager are a lot of things that make you a good independent consultant as well. And so talking about that management crisis and what is good management, what is bad management, how to avoid being a bad manager, how to be a good manager. I'm talking about a ton of that in the book. Like if you're just sitting here wondering, driving home and you're listening to us talk and you're like, dude, I just need to know how to be a good manager. I don't care about going and working for myself. You should actually get this book, because I spend a lot of time talking about like what are really good management practices.
And I will make sure that that book and all the description, everything is linked so that you can find it, check it out, purchase it, read it, spread it. I'll make sure that everything is linked in the description. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, again, it just goes so much back to what the majority of books out there are missing. Having that clear path where, like you said, I can walk you through that. You want to do this on the side? I can help show you what to do. Not sure how to get that first customer? I can show you how to do that. So many books will say, hey, how to get your first 10, and you'll read the entire thing and you still have no idea how to get that first customer. So I love that this one really gets granular, really tells you, do this, then do this, think like this, then do this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Again, that's the level you got to get to if you're going to give somebody value, I think. So I really want to give the reader that value that way. I'm really trying, it sounds maybe a cliche to say this, but I'm really trying to help give people a path, show them like a route to change their life. That's really what I'm trying to do. Like, hey, this is how you do it. This is the way. This is the way. Come with me. Right. So I don't want to sound preachy there, or like weirdly, like a guru or something weird like that, because I'm not. It's just like, hey, there's a way to go do this, and you can exit your misery and have a really good existence.
And I think we've kind of hit that shift. So I guess maybe pre-internet, before it was used in everyday occurrences like it is right now, I think it was you go down the path that you're going down, and it felt a little bit more difficult to really completely delve into something else or have something else, just because maybe the options were so limited. But now, when everything we have is mobile or it's our computers, we're always on, it almost feels like overwhelm sometimes, because you're always watching these things of go do this, here's my course on how you can become a millionaire in 24 months. There's overwhelm, and you almost kind of don't know what to listen to and what to take. So again, I love the fact that you're actually giving that value. You're pulling those olives off the branch, and you're saying, look, I'm not just going to keep everything high level. I'm going to crack it open and show you what to do, one piece, and then the next, and then the next. And to me, that's also how I learn. I mean, I love that, because then I can see it, I can visualize it, I can see how that adapts to the path that I want to go down, as opposed to just being kind of pie in the sky. We're thinking the same way, but I still don't know that action plan I need to take.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing on this front is, I show you a lot of what I did that was mistakes, right? So I had to be like, I had to like internalize it myself and go, okay, where did you screw up on that one? Where did you screw up on that one? And then I have to say, okay, so you understand, this is where I made a mistake. This is what I did wrong. And there's a lot of that in the book. There's a lot of like, here's where I screwed up. Don't do this. Don't do what I did here. Don't because again, when I left my last real job in 2010, I didn't have a roadmap. I wish I would have had this book in 2010, right? I wish I would have had it. And then like, I could have read it and been like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. Right. So I had to go invent it or discover it. I don't think I invented it. I just discovered it. And then I'm like, okay, how do I put this into a format that's just digestible so that people will want to read it? And also, how do I make it entertaining? Because I didn't want it to be boring, right? Which is why I put all these crazy stories in there. So that's what's fun about it. I think it's learning through like kind of a different format in business books than you normally get.
Yeah, and again, I feel like all of your background really just brings you right to where you are, with bringing this to the forefront, from everything that you do right now as CEO, being a consultant, having lived through the ups and the downs, and clients that say no, the clients that say yes, the projects that were better. Why did this one not go the way that we wanted? Just I feel like the more that you can kind of have in there, it just humanizes every aspect of it. It shows that a lot of these business books only tell you about the successes. They don't tell you about those failures along the way, and how you sometimes doubt yourself. And everybody has that, but I feel like the more that you can kind of be vulnerable and put that kind of thing out there, other people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make mistakes too, but so did this guy. So let's go through it together.
You're going to find that most success was a 20-year overnight success story, right? There's no such thing as a real overnight success story. It was a 20-year process. My mom read my book. I don't think she knew a lot of stuff in there about my career and things like that. And she sent me a text and she's like, man, you sure did pick the hard way. And I'm like, there is no easy way.
No,
Right.
no.
So in life, this is essentially what you're doing in life is, I don't want this to come off negative either. And I hope that people don't read it this way, but you are picking your pain. Right. So for me, the pain of self-employment has always been an easier pain to endure than the pain of employment. Pain of employment has always been unbearable to me, frankly. Like I've just hated having jobs. And so, it's a lot easier for me to be, that's the pain I pick. Like there's still pain involved in, like, I would be lying to you if I'm like, oh, it's all roses over on this side of the fence. Everything's amazing. It isn't, right? There's a lot of problems and things that they're different, but they're also the same. And there's just a lot of different problems that you're going to encounter, when you're out working on your own. And so, that pain for me is totally endurable. Like I'm happy to take that pain. I deal with that pain all day long. And the older you get and the longer you've been going and doing it, and just more experience you have, like you just get really good at dealing with that and you're good at overcoming those problems and they just become part of the landscape. And then you're in a good spot. You're controlling yourself. You're controlling your destiny, I should say, right? You're not having somebody who you don't even know who's like pouring over a spreadsheet going, hey, we got to lay this guy off, or we got to find the bottom 10% or what we think are the 10% highest paid employees because we got to get the stock price to bump 2 cents on the next quarterly report. Like that's a real thing that people, they encounter. And you don't have that over here, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that over here. So, but what you do have over here is a lot of personal responsibility because it's up to you to make it work, right? You got to have like really good skills in terms of your EQ, your emotional quotient, and how you play your emotional quotient on this side of the fence is extremely important. You got to have your good IQ there as well, right? But your communication, your attention to detail, your ability to build bridges, be honest with data, those types of things are all things that will make you very successful in independent consulting.
Chris, that's amazing. And before we wrap up, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to follow you, how to keep up with you, of course, how to buy your book, which will be all linked below. But I want to give you the last few minutes, just talk about anything that you want to, just so that people can keep up with you.
Yeah, my website is sevenfigure.consulting. So it's not .com, just sevenfigure.consulting. And you can find how to get to me there. And then also the book is on Amazon. And that's how you can get to me. My agency is called Stoic Yeti, which is a really weird name. People either love it or they hate it. Like I love Stoicism and I like Bigfoot. And so our agency is, you put the two things together, you got a Stoic Yeti, right?
Perfect balance.
So that's our agency. And it's easy to find me. I'm on LinkedIn at /Chris Knudsen. Super easy to get to me. Like I probably am too easy to get to. It's too easy to find my phone number. Like
it's
Instagram,
all out there.
Yeah, I'm all there. Like you find me everywhere, right? So, but I wanted people to be able to do that. I want people to be able to get to me. Send me an email, reach out to me. Read the book. If you have a question, get in touch with me. I answer all my emails. So happy to talk.
Heck yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast, make sure to check out Chris. Everything will be linked down below. Send him an email. He will get back to you and can't wait to check out your book. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
You got it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and comment. I love to interact. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel.